7 o'clock. You can say the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, welcome to the December 16th, 2025 St. Mary's City Commission regular meeting. And I forgot to make my public announcement. I'll make it. Please, if you want to speak, feel free, but come up to the podium. Tell us who you are. If you are a resident of the city, we'd like to know. And try to keep your comments clear, concise, and courteous. First thing we want to look at tonight are appropriation ordinances 1286 and 1287. 1286 was interesting. I wanted to understand that. So that people donated,
To the payroll.
and then we're just paying that back out.
This person, yeah.
Any questions or comments on those?
Sorry, one question on the cell phone stipend for, I understand, the city employees are fine, but folks like Nick Whitehead or Rocco, can you
Our
kind
rec
of,
director,
can you give background on that, that's their,
they get a lot of phone calls, and they don't have an office, so that's the best way to handle it.
okay. And so these individuals, like, you guys vet them and make sure that it's accountable and all that.
We contact them with it, if that's what you're asking, yes.
Okay. What are they, to get the background on how that happens, okay.
Yeah.
I guess it just said the BG consultants, what is that?
So that's for that Lakeview sewer line, thing you approved of that, although we don't have the agreement in front of us, it's at 48,000.
Okay,
So on the invoice, it just increased it by that amount, but it still showed the same amount percentage paid plus a little bit more, because of what we're paying tonight. 7,500, 7,200.
and yes, so I would entertain a motion to approve the ordinances as presented.
Okay, move we approve appropriation ordinances number 1286 and 1287.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
The second time.
I have a motion and a second, all those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
There are none opposed. The proposed meeting minutes from the last meeting. I appreciated the folding of Nathan's comments of appreciation.
Oh,
Well done. Good on them. There are. Good.
Good.
Okay, so approved. Any agenda items to add?
One question, the email that came through about putting a notice on, or.
on the refuse.
Yeah, is that something that needs to be an agenda item?
We was gonna do it under, city manager discussion, but you can definitely add it.
Okay.
Want to add that? Sounds like a good thing to add is, Tri-County refuse request.
Sure.
They have people that are just piling up stuff that she believes violates the agreement, and we sent out some photos, so yeah, it's definitely worth.
I don't know, I'm at the bottom of the page here. All right, we'll put it on.
We're running out of space.
Item November, Tri-County
Refuse.
refuse request. Okay, anything else? All right. The first order of business is the city commission vacancy, because we thanked Nathan for his service last time. He's not allowed to come back anymore, so. And he has officially tendered his resignation as of last week. So there's a vacancy that we need to fill by nominating someone and appointing. So I'll just ask if I have any, I'll be open to nominations for appointing a replacement commissioner for Nathan. Do I have any nominations?
Hey, Mr. Mayor, I nominate Joe Bryan to fill the vacancy.
So we have a nomination for Joe Bryant to fill that vacancy. Do I have any other nominations?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate Nate Rico for the
Nate
vacancy.
Greco. Okay, I have a nomination for Nate Greco and a nomination for Joe Bryant. Any other nominations? No other nominations? Okay, so I would accept a motion then at this point.
Mr. Mayor, I move we appoint Joe Bryan to fill the vacancy on the city commission.
Okay, I have a motion to appoint Joe Bryan. Do I have a second? I'll second that. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor to appoint Joe Bryan to the commission, vote aye.
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 Nay?
Sorry, did we get
Nay,
Nay?
nay?
so 3 ayes.
3 ayes. Motion succeeds.
Okay, so the motion succeeds.
If you could have like a 3 or 4 minute recess, we get him sworn in and see.
We'll recess just for, until 10 past, so that Joe can be sworn in.
Have you with us?
This is a,
He's on the BZA, he's a former city commissioner, or a name tag for him, so.
How long do you keep name tags?
Well, forever, really. Cause we already had Gerard Kleinsmith from his previous term, that's the first time.
there'll always be a place for you.
They go,
From now on.
they go into a folder, cause people cycle through, they're on the planning commission, they're on the city commission sometimes, and, they're $23 a piece these days,
Okay.
so.
It's almost an investment.
We got cookies,
Welcome back.
candy.
You were more efficient than you were expecting.
Oh, it was a recess, not a, ring
But I
light.
can bring it back into session whenever.
I think so, this isn't an executive session, did we leave? No, we left, that'd be fine.
Not even the Grinch.
But I would wait, I wouldn't do the budget one, just. Do go to C, the waiver.
Alright, so we'll bring the meeting back into session. I'm gonna skip over the amendment hearing till we're at least past 7:10. So we'll go to item C on the agenda, Excelsior Theater Armory alcohol waiver request. You saw in the packet that.
So, have you seen the?
Yes.
So it's the process.
Well, this should be dramatic.
Good.
So, review the company service. Bernadette Rickamini, just here on behalf of Excelsior Theater Company, we're hosting a fundraiser in February 2026. And in the rental agreement with the Armory, it states that we aren't allowed to serve alcohol. And we're hoping to serve alcohol for a fee because it is a fundraiser. So we're asking that the city commission waive that so we can. And for our future days of June, I think it's June, I have it written down. I haven't been in, and then also in November.
you see in the packet, this has been done a number of times before. So I don't have a concern, but I don't know.
Is there a legal reason why this is the default?
Control, they just didn't wanna have it open to that kind of environment without approval, it's been that way for a long time. So 2010, I think, is the first time it was waived, so it's been in place that long.
Okay, do you want to have a comment?
Not really. So is this for all the events?
Yes, for all the events that we're gonna be hosting in 2026.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Okay.
So just a consensus on,
If there's consensus to waive it.
do we have a consensus to waive?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
The only thing I wanted to say was, I'm looking at the application, and item number 2, I think I would propose we might wanna make 6 items rather than 5, because in item 2, the first sentence says alcohol, liquor, and cereal malt beverages cannot be advertised. And then the next sentence, it is the responsibility of the applicant to be responsible, we can reword that, but the point is, I think those should be 2 separate bullets.
Yeah.
And I think that those are 2 separate things.
And then they should always be responsible.
Yeah,
whether it's waived.
well, I mean, I think we wanna have wording like that in there, but when we tie it to number 2, then we don't
No, I
really
was-
wanna get rid of the second part, that's all.
No, that's fine, I was just laughing because we've done it a number of times and every time we think it's final. But that's a
Well,
good,
there's
that's a good
always room
suggestion.
for
So,
improvement.
do you want us to draft something up for the next meeting on that?
I would, yes, please. Okay, now we're past 7:10, so I'm gonna go back to agenda item Bravo, budget amendment hearing.
So, last month, I was authorized to publish, budget amendment numbers, it's an annual event. I went through and, so, in front of you would be the electrical rates, or revenue and expense for this year. And although the revenue's not really in play in the budget amendments, you can see that the cost for the power has already went, it would be a separate thing handed out tonight. It would show you that we've already exceeded the, guesstimate for the cost of power. And the way our rates are structured is that the more we spend on the power, it gets cycled through and we will cash flow is what I'm saying. So,
So, hold a second, before we go much further, could I just open the budget amendment hearing?
I thought you did.
No, I'm just saying it's not the, so I'm opening the budget amendment hearing, and now please, Maurice, get that, we wanna make that official, so that's open, so go ahead.
Okay, so when you do the budget, we generally do it in August and September, and you have to do it for how the next year's gonna end, and you don't have a full year's worth of information, and we do estimates. And you go back at the end of the year if need be, and make these adjustments, and so on the electrical one, the biggest driver in there is always the cost of power, purchase power, so, usually that's, you don't know what the weather's gonna be like. We kinda know what the cost is, cause we get it from our wholesale provider, but we don't know how much people are gonna use, and if it's particularly hot in here, that sort of stuff. And then, we put a flat amount in our distribution line item, 200,000, but we're gonna go over that anyway because of that substation project. It was accounted for in total cash. And then, this year, we had to pay for last year's property insurance and all that sort of stuff, so that affected all the funds to some degree. So the electric one is that, the admin one, so the insurance that gets charged to the admin portion is already 41,000 over, and that's 2 years worth. In the street department, it's 23,000 over with. So that, the sales tax needs amended because it didn't account for the storm damage repair. I had no idea what it was gonna be. I heard 1.8 million, so last year, the budget was amended by $1 million or something and, to cover that. Whatever, and it's fine. And then the sewer fund, I didn't have that we was gonna spend $105,000 on that washer compactor, that kind of stuff. There's money there for it. Through November, since they did the November financials, I went through and updated everything. And also in my report, I'll give you an update on the Olympic, bill. But we have these outstanding projects, that sort of stuff, so it's a number of things if you ask me, so I would just ask that you leave the budget hearing open, and then at the end, if there's questions from the public or from the commissioners, we can do that, but that's approximately my explanation.
Any questions come up here for now on that? Okay, so I'm gonna, any public comment on that? Okay, so we'll leave it open. Please don't let me forget it. Next item on the agenda, Delta D. Well, we'll defer that because Brian's on his way. Yeah, Brian. So we'll move on to item E, Echo sales tax on food, which, I don't know if you want to address that, Gerard, but I think we have an answer as well, so. Do you want- Go ahead.
So we were asked about having an exemption on the sales tax for food. So I asked the county about that, and apparently that is not actually an option, so just an update on that.
Yeah, it was brought up 2 years ago. We had our auditor try to contact the Department of Revenue, couldn't get an answer. And did you go through the county commissioner and the county? So that's who those emails are from. I was just curious. I appreciate it. I couldn't get the answer. I couldn't, not through them, but through the state and their auditor, so.
Okay, I asked Mr. Drew who to ask because he had looked into it, and I asked him and he said, no, so.
Yeah, no. And they gave you a dollar amount too, 83,000 or something like that, or?
So Jennifer, did you want to come up and say something?
So I did ask about this 2 years ago, and it is at the state level when they drop the sales tax on food, they do not allow the counties and cities to have two rates. So if you drop it on food, you have to drop it on everything. And that is something they said that the cities and counties were alerted to, and that they could have joined a group to kind of fight that when it was going through, but apparently nobody did or something. So that's the current status at the state level. And it can be addressed at the state level if a city joins other cities to address it, which I would be an advocate for, but that's the status of it at the state level.
Good. The next item on the agenda is CMB licenses. And did we get, those are all ready? But there were a couple pending because you had to do background checks or?
These ones are all done, the other two, one is pending from the state yet, and then the other one I am still waiting on background check.
Okay, so do we do a motion to approve it and name
I
the,
mean, that's a question, yeah, so who are the two you have completed?
I have, Ray's and shortstop.
Are those the only two that you're looking back from?
And we should do it all in pending.
So sometimes we make motions that you approve something pending receipt of an insurance form or whatever. What are we lacking from the other two?
Background checks.
Background checks, which it's not gonna be a problem. So you can approve them all, and pending they pass it
we
out.
need to name also, we have the names of these.
And there's two that are pending,
The two that are pending are Fire Tax and Family Dollar.
the Friar Tuck and Family Dollars are working on the background check paperwork, and the other two are, so.
Okay, that's okay with me to do it that way. I would entertain a motion to approve CMB licenses for Rays and Shortstop now, and for Family Dollar and Friar Tuck pending successful completion of background checks.
I would move to approve the CMB applications for Shortstop and Raise Aftermarket now, and to conditionally approve Family Dollar and Friar Tuck's application for the completion of paperwork.
Do I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second, all those in favor vote aye. Aye. Aye, there are none opposed, so that's. I thought it'd be right now, unless you really want. So Brian's here, are you ready to talk, Brian?
I am.
Alright, so we'll go back to agenda item
We pass them out,
Delta
sorry about that.
2026 employee health insurance.
That's fine.
So if you could just hold for a second.
Thank you, yeah.
We got it.
Please, whatever.
So, couple things on, what Maurice told me that you guys had tabled the employee contribution, discussion on, what you're gonna do for the upcoming year, whether you're gonna hold the same percentage, do 90-10, do something else. So what are your thoughts on that? What are you looking to do?
Like give you my thoughts, but I think there are probably additional thoughts. You wanna start with mine? But my thoughts are, and you ran this as one of the, ideas, but you didn't seem to foreground it. My thoughts are the smart thing to do would be to hold the employee contribution at the same amount. So I'm not looking at percentage, but that'd be a percentage, I don't know what it is, but somewhere between.
We'll figure out that
Yeah.
on the back end.
Yeah, so that there's no increase payout for the employees, because that's gonna impact, in my opinion, when we look later on at employee salaries. So if we can hold that steady, I think that's a good way to balance that out. I think it also minimizes our risk on other people coming in potentially we weren't expecting. Those are my thoughts.
Okay. Any others before I kind of talk through it a little bit? So overall, okay, the rates went up 127,000 some change.
Right.
Okay, so if we kept it the same percentage, the employees would then go up $22,000 in total, and then the employer would be 105,465. So when we looked at with the Freedom Claims Management, we hope that we're gonna have savings generated in there. And we were talking about, okay, how do we share that with the employees? What are we looking at in future years? So I think in a good year, on that 30% number was about $41,000 of savings over the entire year. So when you're looking at that, if you hold the employees the same, then the employer's paying that full $127,000, but you're basically foregoing the $22,000 that the employees would have paid in additional premium. So you're in essence giving it to them up front, as opposed to looking at that 90-10 number and taking their number down even farther. Then that, just kind of changes that whole perspective. So that would be my recommendation, to hold the employees. If you want to share that up front, hold the employees at what they're paying today on the medical, and then, that generates about a $22,000 savings, that's it.
I'm sorry, when you say hold the employees, you mean by percentage or by dollar?
By dollar.
Okay, so that's, yeah.
What he said, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah,
Because I misunderstood your email then. I thought you meant hold the percentages, but
well, if you hold the percentages, then,
it's gonna be a lot more
they're going
expensive.
up $22,000.
Right.
And one of the things that I was hearing, kind of back with my conversations with staff, was that, if we generate savings, how do we share part of that back with? Do you wait and do it on the back end, or do you try to do it up front? And if you hold the employees what they've been paying today and not charge them the additional amount, then you're basically sharing that up front, and then if we have additional savings, then we'll talk about, in future years, how we share that.
So to keep them at the same, out-of-pocket rate now, what would are you suggesting changing the percentage from 86-14 to another percentage?
Yes.
What percentage? I'm sorry if I'm not seeing that.
Well, we don't have the percentage on there, so it would be, it's 84-16 now, right? And that, if you left it at 84-16,
Yeah, you're basically looking at 12.5%, the employees be paying 12.5% on the employee, and then between 13.24 and 13.38. If you hold their amount the same, the 142.82 that they're paying on a single, and you kept that, and then the employer pick up the full additional additional amount, so you're looking at, you're changing it a couple percentage points.
And I looked at I think I was looking at the numbers correctly. Our increased cost for the city, with that is about 31% or something like that, or it's 127%. Which is what we budgeted for, so I'm completely comfortable with taking that upfront increase, because it's what we kind of anticipated. And then as we move forward, we can see how to share that, either drive their costs down or just pay us back to cover that. So do we have
Any other discussion?
is there a discussion, is there a decision to make, just decide on what we want to set for the,
I think so, I think tonight's the night, because, the open enrollment has to be done in a very tight time from this.
Yeah, and so, one of the things that I did, and if I have to ask for forgiveness, I can ask for forgiveness. I sent what everybody is on today to Freedom's Claims Management. So they're already working on ID cards and all that, so when they come for open enrollment, they're gonna have ID cards. Now, if somebody changed from employee, spouse to family, okay, they're not gonna have a card for the family members. Or if they had a family and they went to employee, spouse, okay, then they're gonna have a card with family members that aren't really covered, and then we'll have to get them a new card. But I wanted to err on being able to have cards in their hands, since that's how they're gonna get back to that $1,500 deductible was with the Freedom Claims and your co-pays. I went ahead and had them start working on that. But we do need to have a decision, so then I can get the individualized forms over to Kelsey, so then we can get open enrollment done and then have a meeting where we bring Freedom Claims in and to talk to all the employees, so we're kind of getting, we're bumping up against Christmas and all of that.
so we need two decisions, the percentage and whether or not we need to ask for forgiveness?
Yeah,
Is that-
exactly.
Okay. Did you have something else, Frank?
Names for your, so I think I've got the numbers here, so for last year, the employees, is it 8416 or 8614?
86.
It's 8614. So last year, the employees' percentage to 2026 employees' percentage for a family plan, the employees' increased out of pocket is $1,750, so $1,750. It comes down to $33.65 a week. And then an employee child is essentially $1,100. Employee only is $514. And that's the difference on an annual, so that's our annual increase. So looking at it, I don't really have a firm opinion on this. Do we want to do it via pay increases or changing the percent? And is there a benefit one way versus the other? Because at $33 a week, $1 an hour increase compensates for that. Any thoughts on that, Brian?
I mean, you could do it either way. I mean, it really ultimately doesn't matter, because they're gonna take it out pre-tax. So when you give that dollar, but then you're gonna take, 70% of that dollar back. So they're still getting a little better. If you do it the way you were talking about, going ahead and raise it, give them the dollar raise to offset that, and then they're still coming out a little better, but they're paying. So ultimately, or you can keep them the same where they are today on their, what they're contributing, and then if you give a raise, they get 100% of that raise, or you're just saying that's part of your raise, is we're not increasing your, because, bottom line is, the city took a $127,000 increase in premiums this year. So that's spread out however you want to spread it. It would have cost, if we kept the same percentages, about $22,000. Employees, all 19, depending on tier they're in, it's about what it is. And it's not an exact 84, 16, it's like 1635 is what the employees are paying, and then 1739, 1721, and 1763, depending upon where they are. So it's just how the numbers worked out between this and previous years. So I mean, it's ultimately,
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge is that the issue of incentives, right? Like, if we incentivize, and like, it sounds terrible, just trying to keep people out of the insurance, like, that's not really the goal. But if we incentivize one more family to sign up, that equals 2,600 times 12, right, which is maybe $30,000, right? So then
And if you do it through pay, some departments get a lot more overtime than other departments, and that's gonna, play a role too.
is there any way to look at it in tandem with like the raises? Like joining the two motions and just deciding at the same time? Or the two agenda items?
Preference would be to treat the insurance separately, have a separate motion, and then address the pay differently.
Effectively doing that, but bearing that in mind as we.
The pay increase motion usually goes in full effect with the first full pay period of the next year. The health insurance one, January 1st, I mean, I'd like to keep them separate, but.
So on the note, Raphael, so I guess more of a conversation with Maurice as well, is, so, okay, so what's the concept? The cost of living's going up, right? We typically give a pay increase, but this is a large increase in the cost of insurance. So the idea is, if we give an employee a pay increase, but also they're paying more for insurance, essentially, it's not quite the pay increase that they may be expecting or may need. And, is that right? Is that the right approach to how to approach a pay increase for 2026? But, I mean, the concern's real, even though it's uncomfortable saying it. We incentivize with a city paying higher percentage of the premium. There's a likely big increase in the overall insurance bill. So the question would be, is that something that you can work out on an individual basis, looking at the healthcare
I'm not
cost
sure,
increases?
I'm not sure we can do that. I think you need to keep them separate. I don't know if you can give a pay increase based on someone's health insurance participation, even though every year we agree to the health insurance, the people on the more expensive plans are getting a greater dollar amount, but when we do a flat percent for salaries, those of us who are making more per hour are getting a larger share there. I would just appreciate keeping them separate, and the idea of keeping the dollar amount out of pocket the same sounds solid. And then some sort of salary increase, and then 2 years from now, do that pay plan again, give that update from there, and that would be my recommendation. It does, I don't want to use the terms winners and losers, but no matter which way you go, someone's getting more than the other people. One through a more expensive plan, one through higher wages, or one through more overtime. So we've kind of got it built in this way. I like to keep them separate, and the idea of keeping the out-of-pocket, I think is sound.
and the other thing, just point of reference on, very few employers are contributing over 80% of the full family. So you guys, so that is gotta be part of the salary discussion as well, just because, most of the employers out there, they may play, a percentage of the single, and then maybe 50% of the difference, or, just what they're contributing toward that amount, and then the employees have to pick up everything over that.
But I'll speak for myself, and I assume, at least on principle for the rest of us, I don't wanna play those kinds of games with benefits. I mean,
Yeah.
we're paying a salary and we're giving a benefit.
Yeah.
You have a family, you don't, whatever, we're paying a salary, I think it's cleaner this way.
I would agree, it's, you know, if we start, yeah, it's hard, right, because pay is individualized, the benefit is a bucket. And I think that's the fair way to look at it, even though it's not, maybe not fair on an individual basis based on crunching the numbers, but at the end of the day, yeah, pay is individual, the benefit is more of a bucket, everybody's part of the same group, so I think I'm agreeing with you in concept there.
I think the most conservative approach would be to go with Mr. Mayor's approach of just making sure the out-of-pocket remains the same. I think coupled with the pay increases, they'll end up ahead by whatever that increase is, so I would support that if that were a motion.
Any other
Okay, clarification on that. So are you referring to the idea of increasing the city's percentage of pay of the premium to make
So
it,
whatever it is, 87.5%.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's what-
whatever it is, yeah.
that's what you're saying?
So that their out-of-pocket remains the same, yes.
I'd support that as well.
anything else, Gerard? Okay.
No.
So, we'll take a motion on that.
So what do you think? With a motion to keep the employee health insurance contribution amounts the same as 2025, something like that, for each of the plans?
That's what
Yeah, the
we're
dollar
doing.
amounts, yeah.
Dollar amounts the same for each of the plans? I think that's the simplest way,
Mhm.
something like that.
So I would accept a motion to, for the employee health insurance to keep the employee contribution, annual contribution to their plans the same in 2026 as it was in 2025.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to alter the motion slightly
Go
to
ahead.
say, I move to approve the health insurance plan with the employer percentage of premium going up to make the employee's contribution in 2026 roughly the same as the employee's contribution in 2025. It's probably gonna be a little bit.
And do we have to approve the Delta Dental at the same time? I can't remember that motion. That part of it as well.
Did
Yeah, I mean, you need to,
we not agree with that?
well, Delta, I mean, if you just left Delta at the same percentages, the employee's going up 16 cents, the employee spouse is 34 cents.
Okay, but we could extend the same logic to
Yeah,
Delta.
you could, totally.
So alter your motion to include that. If that makes
With the
sense.
alteration of putting the delta down.
Amendment?
Okay, so I have a motion as stated from Francis. Do I have a second?
I would second the motion to increase the employer percentage contribution to maintain the dollar amount employee contributions the same for both medical and dental.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, vote aye. Aye, and there are none opposed. Well done, Raphael.
Is there any paperwork that needs signed tonight?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
No, because we got most of that taken
Just-
care of.
Just didn't want to miss the opportunity.
No, I think we're good, and I'll get that, to you, and then you'll be able to print those, and we can get you one. I'll look at, schedules for freedom claims, and then we'll figure out when we can get up here and do the meeting.
Right, so thanks, Brian, and you don't have to seek any fee. And appreciate your helping the employees, understand this transition.
Well, it's a change, but change is scary sometimes, so hopefully, the more that we can educate, the more, data we can give, the better off we'll be making decisions, so that's what we strive for.
But they're never gonna be the same, right? Like, the same claims they could have happened, but previously, yeah, okay.
Yeah, because still, Blue Cross and Blue Shield, you're just buying an umbrella, $6,000 deductible, so their network is gonna drive it all on in or out of network, so yeah, the network stays exactly the same, absolutely.
Brian, could you
Good, thanks again.
come talk to Kelsey in this room tonight?
All right, next item on the agenda, city's long-term plan format. I think Francis is the main speaker on this one. Do we have a handout?
this is intended to be a very rough first conversation on it. And I would anticipate it's gonna take a few meetings to kind of work through to get an understanding and then have a discussion on the various format ideas and possibly the software idea. So I've got two documents here. One, we've heard off, thank you very much, on the large format. And that's kind of a template that I particularly have been using for several years, and then a 2-page Word document. The Word document is just kind of giving a quick overview. Okay, we've got a bunch of different departments and they all have assets. The assets are certainly infrastructure, in many cases, equipment, buildings, systems. The assets are in a lot of different shapes and sizes. And those assets, just like anything, we all have homes, and we have assets, your refrigerator, your washer dryer, right? They're not gonna last forever. So maybe they're gonna last 5 years. And so you kind of say, okay, how much should I save up each year? So in 5 years I can buy a new refrigerator. Same concept with asset management, just so that vehicle that's gonna wear out in 15 years, we're gonna have the money to replace it. That's the general concept of it. The city's been doing this for many years. For the police department budget, we have 2 budgets for the police department. We have what I refer to as the day-to-day budget. It's just the normal payroll, general overhead, the things that are pretty consistent year in year out. There's no major fluctuations. However, every 2 to 3 years, we're buying a new vehicle. And every once in a while, there's new guns or tasers or various things that kind of can come up. So when we do work sessions with the different departments, one of the things we look at is kind of their long-term plan. We see where they're at this year and kind of where they're gonna be next year and the year after that, and just what's coming up that will be purchased. And after doing a couple of these year in, year out, you start going back to the same document. Okay, last 6 months ago when we met, here was the plan. Is that's still the case? So we're able to just gently update it a little bit, a couple times a year typically, and start getting a pretty good idea of where we're gonna be in 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 10 years, sometimes even 15 years in some of the more unique departments that schedule out that far. And so with the police department, it's very simple. Right? We have the day-to-day budget and we have the capital improvement budget, which mainly is to buy new vehicles. So about every 2 years, typically, we're buying a new vehicle. A new vehicle is gonna be about $50,000. So we're saving about $25,000 a year. It's not that complicated. Looking online a little bit, just asset management for cities, they can make it very complicated. And I remember my first couple years in the city commission, we hosted an asset management presentation. And when I attended it, it turned more into an inventory control system, down to minute details of nuts and bolts and cans of oil and things like that. I was not super enthusiastic about going to that granular of a detail, just because I think it's a lot of time and there's not a return for that. So when I took the approach of kind of building a 10-year plan, because I ended up doing it because various opinions on the commission weren't able to settle in a format, so I just said, oh, whatever, I'll do it. So I've been keeping my own personal one based on the work sessions with city staff. And this is the format that I came up with. That's the big handout. This is just an example. Some of the numbers may not be 100% accurate because I'm guessing at some of them.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
So
Of course.
just to make sure I understand, the top part is the normal annual, and the bottom part is that second part of the budget, and you're tracking these things separately.
I personally am, in our budget, they're not tracked separately in our financials. But what I'm doing is I'm taking a look at our financials And, and the income's pretty easy. The expenses, I'm going through the various line items and kind of giving a little bit of a high level estimate. Okay, health insurance, the salaries, all the things that work comp. And I'm guessing, all right, that's about, in this case, $175,000 a year for personnel. Department meetings, I'm kind of grabbing the line items in our budget that would fall into that category. My main goal is to have the expenses match up with what our budget is, so
I'm
it's,
just trying to map this, so that the general concept, the two budgets, general needs, that's the top part, capital improvements, that's the bottom.
But the big thing that I do differently than our current process in a couple of our budgets is that bolded large amount in the middle of expenses, and that's the transfer to capital improvement plan.
Which carries down to the,
Yeah, that becomes an expense for the day-to-day fund, but it's a revenue for the capital improvement fund. It's the same thing we do for the police budget. It's hard though, because like, what does get listed and paid for out of a capital improvement fund? There's a lot of gray area there. And so it's hard to know what's in your day-to-day general fund maintenance, as opposed to, is that a capital improvement fund purchase? And there's always a difficult making that distinction. And so what I do on this format is just, hey, I'm gonna try to make sure that we have enough money to pay for the day-to-day estimates, plus, you know, we're gonna have a certain amount in our budget to pay for capital improvement projects. So in this certain case, drop it down $280,000, 2025, and I just guess, let's go $200,000 and play the game out. So you can have the transfer of the capital improvement fund expense into the capital improvement fund budget. And then I'm able to just run the years on various projects, year in, year out, and then make sure we have the money to keep our day-to-day budget in good shape, and also our long-term capital improvement fund budget in decent enough shape to pay for what we need to pay for. So you can take a look down the water capital improvement fund expenses, and these line items kind of come from work sessions with the water department. You can see for this year, 2025, and the well house cleaning, painting the water tower, some engineering for the water line replacement, and then the large water line replacement project, $256,000 there. So you can kind of see, okay, down at the end, down at the bottom, it's total expenditures for the year, and then the carryover estimate. And then the next year, the carryover estimate just pops up to be our beginning balance, and then it's the same thing year after year after year. And these are all very rough numbers to a certain extent, once you get to the out years. But that's, at least in my mind, allows me to know roughly we're able to do a couple $100,000 worth of water projects, and that's what our day-to-day general budget will look like. So,
Under the way that things operate currently, what are we doing with the amounts that are bolded in that row?
so currently, I think they go on in our water budget, we just use it as, it all falls into the maintenance line item.
Distribution,
Yeah.
improvements. And for sewage collection, but it's for the electric and the water distribution, system maintenance, whatever.
So the general improvements is less targeted than what you suggest?
I mean, it works, our current system, but for me, the way I look at it, it's hard to predict. Because one year, we might have a $250,000 project, plus a bunch of others, we might have $343,000 of a capital improvement. And the next year, we might have $50,000 or whatever. It's hard to really see a line item fluctuate that much in the day-to-day budget and be comfortable where we're gonna be in the out years. So that's where mentally I'm more comfortable looking at it this way, so that I can have a constant on my day-to-day budget. So it's just a steady, every year it's $200,000 or whatever, it just gets transferred out. And then we know in our capital improvement fund, we have $200,000 to plan for. And if that's not enough, we have to have the conversation about rates. And if it's too much, then we at least know, and we have the conversation about speeding up projects or decreasing rates. But it kind of puts I think the big picture perspective on the fund. I can tell you that over the years, that I've handed out dozens of these at various commission meetings when we have a big infrastructure project that we're planning next year, following years. I'll bring the sewer one at the next meeting so you can kind of see. When we just looked at that, the Lakeview lift station sewer line project where we're converting the lift station into a gravity feed. And the engineer's estimate was up to like $800,000 potentially, which was really steep for that project. We were hesitant, but looking at this, it's like, yeah, it's gonna be a little tight, but we can make that work. But the bid came back about half, about $400,000. So that's like, oh, okay, that's gonna be much easier. And now we're able to just see the big picture, how would we pay that bond off? Anyway, so for today, I'm happy to keep the conversation going, talk about it for as long as anybody wants to. But I think going forward, keeping this on the agenda, have some time to look at this, do your own research online at different asset management systems, plans, ideas, softwares. And then I don't know what the right thing is for us, but I know that I believe it would be very helpful for the commission, say staff, if we can all find something that kind of works with everybody. The one thing I'll add is we do have several funds in our budget that are capital improvement funds for the various departments. Just because this is an ongoing conversation, we haven't really been funding them, because we haven't made that final decision on the format and just how we're gonna break it up. But those capital improvement funds do exist, just operate mainly off of the single fund right now.
Yeah, so thanks, Brenda. I like this approach, and here are two examples that I've noticed. We've talked about a long-term plan for water, in fact. You'll see the picture at some point. Very old pipes. We've already had engineering done where we have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. We know this has to be done, and we need to have a plan for doing it. That's a long-term plan. And so it would be good to figure out, okay, well, how much, and start putting it away rather than, okay, and then the other example is what we were talking about, the parks. What do we want to do with our parks? If we have a plan, then we have to figure out how we're gonna pay for it. And instead of just, oh, we have a big thing, and then let's borrow money now. Well, how about we plan about because we have money that comes in, if we put it aside, then we can phase that in a reasonable way, and maybe instead of doing a gigantic multi-million-dollar water thing, we do a little bit this year and a little bit the next. So now we cover it, we tend to be able to cover things, it's being covered in, because 2025 has happened, we've paid for all that stuff. But I would prefer planning it more, so it's more like, doing things on purpose rather than as you have to, being proactive rather than reactive. So I like this idea. And as Francis said, we've done it on a small scale with the police department, and that's been very helpful, because then we have something that we can, you said you wanted to do this, well, why are we doing that? And for what it's worth, we're not on that topic yet, but to me, this sort of planning is the feeder for this. It becomes our agenda, our to-do list, and we can measure progress, as we go along. So I like the idea. That's my input now.
advantage of doing it that way instead of using classic accrual accounting and saying the paint on the water tower depreciates by, I don't know, $3,000 a year?
I'm sorry, this would account for additional improvement projects, not just something that we're already paying for, sort of as a recurring thing. I don't know if that gets to your.
Could we do both?
Yeah, I think the top part is for the recurring anticipated costs.
Could he put something together for us to review? It's a new topic for us. I mean, no decision has to be made tonight. I think I'd understand it better if I could see it. But I do understand, so some of the stuff is capital improvement and some of it's regular maintenance. We have a long-term agreement with the Viking Industrial Painting to handle the painting of the tower. They charge $700 each month or each year, and then it gets bigger, and we just had it painted, so it's gonna go down, and that sort of stuff. But if we have to start replacing, $300,000 worth of stuff like that, but I'd like to see if I'm interjecting.
No, that's fine, I think that's the idea, we merge these ideas and figure out which part that you just remind me of another, I've been going through this process a few years now, and it is a little frustrating sometimes, because we have department meetings, and they come and we try to figure out the budget for the next year, but we don't seem to have a great tracking mechanism for that. Like, we try to do it 1 year at a time rather than really laying it out, so.
The only thing I'd add is, in your example, like the things that are listed here, yes, they would all fall under the category of maybe they appreciate, but what I like about this approach is that it leaves room for investments of something that's not currently here and that's not depreciating.
Yeah.
So if you're saving up for a new project, like this is where it would go, and I would appreciate that. So I think that'd be just one example of the benefit of doing this.
All right, so maybe some collaboration between times then. Anything else on that tonight? All right. Thank you, Francis.
Yeah, and I'll just, begin to stay on the agenda, and I'll bring a couple more things, and then just keep the conversation going to the next meeting.
Thank you. Next item is the Parks and Recreation Board. One of my favorite topics. In the packet is an ordinance. An ordinance, not the one that we were talking about. But anyway, do you want to take this one, Francis?
I might have jumped too early on adding this to the agenda. Wanted to have a few more thoughts put together. I guess real quick, see if anybody wants to talk about it. So there seems to be, all right, so how does it currently work with the Parks and Rec Board? We have a Parks and Rec Board with a rec director as a member of it. And the rec director is a city employee. Parks and Rec Board members are appointed by the city commission, of a volunteer Parks and Rec Board. And I think the general idea is they kind of consider, advise the Parks and Rec director on ideas for sporting activities, things at the park. They're just kind of an advisory board to the Parks and Rec director. And then when the city commission has an idea for the parks, the general rule of thumb is we'll send that idea to the Parks and Rec board for consideration. They send it back to us, and then we decide what to do with it. Last year, a little over a year ago, I was talking to the Parks and Rec director, or the chair of the Parks and Rec board, and I asked him, I said, hey, would it be helpful if because we had a bunch of ideas, there's a lot of enthusiasm, and nothing was really moving forward. So I asked him, I said, hey, would it be helpful for a city commissioner to be on the Parks and Rec board to kind of report back to the city commission and also have a little bit more public responsibility, because we're meeting every other Tuesday. that commissioner would have accountability to the city commission to give updates on the progress of various projects. So there'd be almost a required communication between the Parks and Rec Board and the city commission. And the chairman of the Parks and Rec Board said yes, he thought that would be helpful because, you know, the Parks and Rec Board sometimes doesn't quite know how to proceed because of lack of understanding of the process and the budget and what's possible. And there's also, as we saw, not a very strict routine of meetings, scheduled meetings. So I brought the idea to the city commission. There seemed to be an openness to it. We ended up drafting the ordinance, passing the ordinance, but there was disagreement about filling that position, of nominating a city commissioner to fill that position on the Parks and Rec Board. So we voted to approve the ordinance to do it, but we couldn't come to a consensus on filling that position. It was fun. So at one of the future meetings, we rescinded that ordinance and went back to kind of the current setup with the slight alteration of adding the Parks and Rec Director to the Parks and Rec Board. And that's kind of where we're at now. You know, is it a good system? Is it a good process? You know, if we're expecting certain effects or results, does the system and process have the proper structure to create those effects and results that we're wanting? And that's where I you know, maybe that wasn't the best idea. Maybe that's not the correct idea. So I guess it's just more just open discussion. What do you think about the current system? And I'll throw out the one idea that I was leaning towards presenting tonight was, you know, changing the Parks and Rec Board's responsibility to really be strictly focused on activities in the parks and helping the Parks and Rec Director have more of a voice of the city. You know, you have 5 members from the city, you know, there's people in St. Mary's that have different opinions on what would be good Parks and Rec activities. And that would help give a little bit more of, what's the word of the day, diversity of ideas to the Parks and Rec Director to implement programs and basketball, baseball, all that fun stuff down the park. All right, and last thing, so one idea is to change the role of the Parks and Rec Board to strictly kind of working on current activities, current things we're doing, and making those great and wonderful. And then have a kind of a subcommittee at the will of the city commission to study larger projects. And when we have those larger projects, which don't, you know, they can be frequent, but probably not. They're gonna be, you know, it's not every, you know, month where we're gonna have large projects in the park. So maybe it's every couple of years there are large projects or something like that. When those come up, to have the city commission create a committee specifically for analyzing that large project and have a strict process for them to follow, and designate a city commissioner to run that subcommittee and make the thing happen. And, you know, we could designate who would be on that subcommittee. It'd be one city commissioner, Parks and Rec Director, chairman of the Parks and Rec Board, and 2 other members of the community or something. I don't know. I mean, it can be, so I'm trying to think of what is a better process than our current process. Because a year and a half ago, there was a lot of excitement about pickleball court, and where a year and a half later, the process now does not work, in my opinion. And I'm not gonna expect different results from the same process. So I think we do need to take a serious look at making an improvement there. So if there's a openness to looking at various ideas, happy to have the conversation and certainly bring ideas to the next meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any comment?
Yes, so I agree 100% on your viewpoint, and I think maybe a challenge with the way that things are set up currently is that it's my understanding that if the advisory board were to want to meet to discuss its current scope, that it would be subject to COMA. Is that a correct assumption?
We're supposed to have them advertise
it's supposed to be advertised in an open meeting and all of that. And I appreciate that the effort of that is to promote transparency, but I think that challenges the efficiency with which they can meet officially to do their job. So I think I would, and again, just brainstorming, that I would agree with your idea of maybe changing the scope of what the advisory board for the Parks and Rec Committee does to something maybe a little bit more limited. But instead of going the subcommittee route, which I would assume would, again, be subject again to COMA, given that that's their scope and that's what they're supposed to do, create a broader committee, call it of 7 people, that is called just like the Long-Term St. Mary's Capital Improvement Committee. And in it, you have maybe 2 members are focused on parks, 2 members are focused on infrastructure, called water, sewer, electric, or housing, 2 members are, maybe 2 members are commissioners. So that way, the 2 people that are focused on parks can meet with 1 commissioner at any time, because that's less than 4, which would be the majority that would necessitate COMA, in order to discuss what they're doing, and thereby allow, more efficient getting togethers of promoting whatever it is that they're supposed to do within that committee, without running afoul of current law. And again, just brainstorming and just agreeing with what you're saying, and maybe that would be a suggestion of how we can comply with COMA and at the same time get over some of the hurdles that we currently run into.
So, just very quick response to that. So, yeah, with a 5-member committee, yeah, 2 people can meet, which, yeah, sometimes it's helpful having somebody to talk these things through, with, for sure, in a 7-member committee, 3 people, right? And so, even if it's, however it shakes out, but having a Parks and Rec big project committee with 7 people, so 3 people can meet, and that's typically the way it works. 1 or 2 people often do the majority of the work, and I think that would all work. The one thing that I have found over the years with, a 5-member commission, or even on the planning commission, we had 8 members, I think. There's a value, and sometimes somebody's always quiet, and sometimes somebody's always talking, but there's a value having a slow and steady process and having several people being able to analyze it, because, it's hard to make it, it's hard for one person to have a really good idea on something that's gonna affect an entire town. So a lot of times it's having that larger group work together, on a specific thing. I've seen a lot of that. So even if it is a 7-member committee, but only 2 of them are Parks and Rec focused, it may be a little bit too few, to get enough good ideas to generate a nice final product. Some thoughts.
Just appreciating that everybody's a volunteer, right? So we're trying to get the most passionate people there. There's nothing precluding them from talking to someone that's not on the committee. Would also be an option.
Anything here?
I saw earlier in the month there was a work session for
Yeah,
the codes plan.
so, I want me to comment on that a little bit, fill you in on that. On the one hand, I agree that, the system isn't working quite as quickly as we would like it to. On the other hand, we did actually get, I thought, a pretty good brief from Rocco last week. That was an output from that committee with a real plan. I mean, we're gonna have to look at it and refine it, but I think we're kind of actionable at that point. So I'm hesitant to say that what we have in place now is not worthwhile. I think our real question is, once we have a sense of what we wanna do, how do we move it forward? Cause that's kind of where we are, it's like but yeah, that's what I'm saying, I think that this is precisely, that's why we have a long-term plan, and I'm not a big fan of adding additional administrative elements to get that done, given that we have departments already within the city. And I mean, so I don't have a specific answer to this, other than, I think we do have, as far as Parks and Rec goes, we do actually have something to look at right now. My big question on that is not so much about that board, because they gave us input. It's, okay, how do we take that, refine it, and take the next step? Which, we won't talk about that tonight, but we need to talk about that. And I'm not convinced that we need to change the way the board is, that board is organized to do that. That doesn't mean I don't agree that maybe we should change the scope of that board, because it did take a lot of time to get that out, and they didn't seem very comfortable doing it for whatever reason, I'm not sure why. So, yeah, we had the work session, and I thought the second was productive, because we have a pretty good plan with options to choose from, that I think we could lay out on a long-term plan and say, let's prioritize these and start picking them off one by one. But I think we could do that. We could do that at this level, at that point, at this point. So, I don't know, anything else on that tonight? The next item is gonna be sort of depressingly simple, but don't worry, we're gonna have something exciting coming up after that. CD renewal. We have looks like we have two bids for the renewal of CD number 35311. So I will open it. One is from, well, I'll do the vote first. Caw Valley State Bank, and the other from Bank of the Flint Hills. So we usually write these things down, I have it in front of me. Caw Valley State Bank, RECD 35311. Dear Commissioners, please consider our bid for the above described certificate of deposit with an annual percentage yield of 3.75 for maturity in 6 months, or 3.65 for maturity in 12 months. So those are the two options. 3.75 in 6 months, that's 75 in 6 months, and 3.65 in 12 months. That's Caw Valley. From Bank of the Flint Hills, like to submit the following bids for certificate of deposit 35311 in the amount of $382,072.38. 6 months annual percentage yield of 4.05 and a 12-month of 4.1. Those are the two options there. Anyone need anything repeated on that?
Am I allowed to look at my phone?
Yeah. Well, I mean, depends, what do you, just don't use generative AI.
Just real quickly.
Is there consensus for him to look at mine?
One is lower on the 12. Very strange.
So one is saying their rates will go up and the other that will go down.
These were close enough. They're both lower than 12, aren't they?
No, one goes up, so the one is 4.05 for 6 months and 4.1 for 12. The other is 3.75 for 6 and 3.65 for 12. So we usually, I don't know if you want to discuss it, or someone can make a motion for one of these options.
What's the historical preference of the commission between 6 and 12 months? Like, is there a reason we do one or the other?
Go ahead, Francis, do you want to?
So every situation is a little bit differently. In the past few years, it's definitely been different than 5 years ago or 6, 7 years ago when we were getting less than a 0.25%. It was just ridiculous. So now, so looking at this is over the past year, this is the way the commission, I believe, would analyze it. So obviously the highest one is 4.05 for 6 months. So if we take that one, in 6 months, we have to renew it. So when we renew it in 6 months, do we think it's going to be significantly lower than 4.1? Are we better off taking the 4.1 for 12 or taking the 4.05 for 6 and rolling the dice to see where we're at in 6 months? I don't know.
But in this particular, scenario, given what one of these institutions is suggesting is gonna happen, then it seems like the longer term one is the smart way to go, 4.1 and 12. Cause that's just really interesting. Normally, they at least are on the same track, you know, and one is higher, and they've been offering at 18, they've been offering 9-month things, they've been offering weird things. So anyway,
I just wanted to make sure we weren't needing the cash in 6 months
Oh,
or
no.
anything like that.
okay, well, once we get a long-term plan, we'll know that better, but at the moment, we got the,
Maurice, have we ever had to call in a CD?
No, but we
Really?
did check to see, and I can't remember which bank it was, they wouldn't charge us a penalty for breaking it if we had a valid reason.
Yeah.
I assume the other bank would behave the same way, so you're free to.
all right, given that, I would, accept the motion for,
I just take that over.
is that a motion?
Okay, I will, what was it, okay. I would, put forth a motion for a 12-month CD from Bank of Flint Hills at 4.1%.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
A second.
I have a motion, and a second, all those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Aye, and they're not opposed, so we will accept the, Bank of the Flint Hills offer of 12 months at 4.1% for CD 3531. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, Fifth Street, Bertrand Avenue Electrical Project. You don't wanna speak to this, Maurice?
Francis had, I'm
Oh,
not
you
sure
have
which one we're talking
Francis.
about.
Francis, you are keeping us busy tonight. That's good. Go ahead.
Speedy, hopefully quick. So, met with a property owner a couple months ago about an idea that he has for this property downtown at the corner of Fifth and Bertrand. And, you know, he was looking at some of the city infrastructure, specifically the electric lines and different things like that, on how they would potentially restrict the project he's wanting to do. And, you know, with old infrastructure, you know, why is it where it is? Was a decision made 50 years ago, 40 years ago, 100 years ago, it doesn't matter, right? It was a decision made a long time ago. Does it work with what people want to use their property for today? So there's, I think, a pole and maybe some electric lines that are
There's a,
maybe going over top of.
I drew an arrow where the pole's at.
Yeah, okay. So a little bit north. So the north arrow, then the small arrow on Fifth Street to show there's a pole. I don't know, there's a pole there with electric lines that could restrict a couple story building that he's considering doing. So I told him, I said, I don't know what the commission would be open to consider, but I'll certainly present it to the city commission. A couple ideas. The one idea that I would have, and I'm happy to keep city staff out there, see if it's realistic and possible. But the one idea would be to take the electric lines that cross Highway 24, coming from the alley down near the Armory, and go along the east side of Fifth Street. It's kind of a pretty big power line. And take those and go underground throughout that entire area. And not an electrical engineer, but my guess would be there that we'd have to change from a pole transformer to a ground transformer about where that arrow is, maybe a little bit farther north. and then kind of put some of the wires underground in that area. There's a lot of infrastructure there that I'm not quite familiar with, don't know how it all works, so. So what, from the city's perspective, or at least my perspective, on the city's perspective, we have electric lines there, put a lot of effort in over the years to take the downtown and Main Street and put the electric lines for the streetlights underground. This particular area, we have several poles along Fifth Street with the electric lines going over top. It's a first world problem, not a big deal. So we kind of didn't really address it when we did our streetlight project. But now looking at it, it would be something, maybe a benefit to make that downtown area look a little bit better, get the electric lines underground, clean up some of the infrastructure there on the north side of Fifth Street. But also it would free up that space for that property owner so they could do a fairly decent sized project, and then move the electric lines away so they could build a 2-story building. A lot of details there. I don't know if it's possible, but I just told the property owner, I'm gonna go through the process, which is talk to the commission about it. Unless there's a lot of pushback, then I'll see if I can schedule a meeting with city staff out there, take a look at it. And then maybe a contractor can come in and say, yeah, it's realistic, yeah, no, it's not. And we just slowly move forward and give the property owner an answer of, no, we're not interested in doing it, or, yeah. And then we'll take a look at moving forward and getting some bids and seeing if it's possible.
So we met with that same property owner, and the issue about the lines is that there's no setbacks for those lots down there. Normally, you have setbacks off of property, but in downtown businesses, they build clear to the property line. So where the line is now, he wants to put a 2+ story building there and use the entire part of the lot. And so we told him it's in the city's easement, it's not our responsibility to try to get a contractor to look at it. But PAR was out here today to look at this project that we're doing by the bridge, which, by the way, they're planning the electrical outage for the 21st at 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Hoping it only takes 4, been planning for a longer one. But since they were in town, Don Folsom, the utility superintendent, took them over to this job site potentially and asked them to give it an eyeball. So that pole that you're looking at, and then the 2 that would go to the east, behind this property over to the whistle stop, would disappear. It'd be underground that way, and then, as Francis was suggesting, that it'd be underground from where that pole is now, across 24, and put on a box on the ground there. Now, so that's the design. That's what they think, that's what they're gonna give us a quote for, a ballpark quote. Because if you're gonna go up for bids, or they are gonna, whoever's gonna pay for this, I don't know. But I knew probably that's what you was thinking about, and I was telling Don, and since PAR was in town today, we'll get a feel for what it's gonna cost and see. So, probably the next meetings, keep in mind, the next meeting isn't until January. There's an extra week between meetings, 4 times a year usually.
Thought they wanted to have a special one.
So, just so you know, we'll have a quote, and they'll do a drawing, and you'll be able to look at it. We won't make the price or estimate public. So, I thought that was probably what you was talking about, Francis, so I mentioned it to Don. So we're kind of down the road a little bit, and maybe the next meeting.
I'm looking at this, because I can get the street view. There are lines that go both directly behind, it looks like, and down.
Yeah, so the ones behind would also be buried, for 2 poles would be removed back there, potentially.
And is there some possibility that the property owner could be involved in paying for this?
That's something you'd have to work out. Just, first of all,
Because
see
I'm
the
looking at
cost.
the pole, I mean, I acknowledge it probably wouldn't be great to have your building right, but it's in the sidewalk, it's beyond the sidewalk.
Well, I'll just say this, those lines from the county are approximate. He actually had it surveyed in their states up there. I'm saying that's a good place to start, but if you go out and look at the survey, it may show a little different. But point being is, I think we understand what's going on, or what potentially could go on, and we'll come back with some information.
I'm just ignorant about this.
Yeah.
Now that you mention it, there are no lines going over Main Street generally, right? Except starting right here. Is that
Well,
right?
there's different circuits, I have to pull up the map, but I think that might be it.
There's, I believe there's one at 7, and then one, I don't know, out, by the creek.
The one's crossing 24, one's considered burying.
I think it's been a couple months, but if I understand the issue, it's not really where the pole is, it's where the pole is going east, the lines that kind of parallel the railroad tracks going east. He believes that those lines are somewhat on his property line, so he's not able to use vertical space there. Those few feet are.
Same on the west side too, Francis.
Well, we're gonna get an idea how much it costs anyway.
Yeah, and like I said, burying those lines across 24, that's a good investment, but I don't know about this whole project, but we've got it rolling.
Thank you.
Next item, the agenda, quarterly newsletter. We talked about last time. Go ahead.
So it's another handout. This is not super exciting at all. Just a starting point for a discussion. It's a format idea. You have title and then a bunch of sections and then 2 columns throwing pictures and little updates for each department. So at the last meeting, we talked about the idea of a quarterly newsletter, people updates on just all the stuff we're doing and the activity in the city. So I think I told the commission I'll bring a format for consideration. And there it is.
Yeah, there's tasking here, there's implicit tasking for all of your departments.
Yeah, I look, there's Adobe format ones that are set up in Word format ones and stuff are similar to that, so.
I think they'll be okay with that. Kelsey thinks they'll be okay with that. Police department looks pretty excited about it.
We'll have to consider that when we talk about raises.
Yeah, that's right. But I like the idea, and as I said, I'll say it again, I like the idea of tying that to the plan, so we have an update process. Well, what does this mean? We like the idea. We like the idea. Send it to Leah. Yeah, but it needs to be done, I guess, we're gonna.
So I noticed there was the mayor's corner on there, so.
Have you decided on a font that we're using?
Well, I think what we decided was that if anyone is newly appointed to the commission, there's
Common
probably. All right,
What about distribution?
well, I think we decided to go out with, utility, a natural mechanism for that to happen.
You mean paper utility bill?
Yeah, but what if we send
We
the,
do digital as well, so if you get an email on utility bill, we can attach a PDF. Normally, sometimes we can't, but normally, we can attach a
I didn't
PDF.
know there were electronics.
I think some people are on auto pay and don't even look at it.
Well, that's true, but, so you can get an auto pay, still get a paper bill, you can get an auto pay and still get a digital bill. So you can attach it to the PDF, you can also put it, if you desire, inside the envelope, so we do about 600 utility bills a month on paper. The rest are digital, so.
All right, so what do we wanna do here? Are you volunteering to take charge of this?
I really need a motion to do this, if you want us to draft something and bring it back, and then, but also, from the commission, if there's any ideas, stuff to write about, or what you're looking for, what to get out there, or submissions of your own, because I mean, I think it'd be heavily.
Well, the top left seems to be from our group,
Note from the mayor/commission,
yeah.
and since we're the publisher, so to speak, there's no limit on space, but,
Yeah,
maybe a limit on attention.
okay, yes, you said that very enthusiastically, but I see that you are, interested in coming up with something.
I occasionally put stuff on the blog and get maybe 10 or 12 readers, so I can do other things. I can go back and recycle some of that stuff.
All right, well, let's give it a shot.
Use the same pictures.
I can tell who visits what, or not who, but how many people visit pages, you know.
All right, next item is, executive session to, discuss non-elected personnel. So,
Is that needed yet? Francis, you put it on there, is that needed?
I'll make sure I'm following the rules and everything correctly, but yeah, I think in the past, this time of year, we've often gone into executive session to talk about some specifics on different employees. And, obviously in executive session, no decisions are made, and then we come back out and move on. I think there's value in doing that this time of year. We found value, I believe, the commissions over the years doing it, so I added it to the agenda. And, would like to.
Okay.
Yeah. go
I
into
remember
executive
doing that, I think it is useful. So I guess our big question is how long we wanna do. I was thinking 15 minutes would be certainly sufficient, unless you think 10 is enough. 15, I think is safe. So, we wanna try to knock something else out here. How about we do the Tri-County waste thing so that, can I make this motion, or do I wanna have someone else to make the motion?
What to do when I have to go
To move into executive session.
Anybody can make it, you can make it.
All right, well, I kinda have it written down here, so I'm gonna make a motion to move into executive session at 8:35 PM for 15 minutes to discuss matters regarding non-elected personnel. With open meeting resuming here at 8:50 PM, no action will be taken. That's my motion. Do I have a second?
Second motion.
I have a second. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
None are opposed. So we have 2 minutes if we want to, I think that last Tri-County, that we can knock that out, agenda item November.
Alright, so she communicated with Kelsey this morning, she being, Christy Hitch of Tri-County, sent us some photos, and I forwarded y'all, believing that it's violating the agreement to have all that extra stuff laying around that. I was gonna just talk during, reports, but, we've seen the photos, you got the contract, anybody have any comments?
But yeah, I think it's fair.
Did she, say what where the locations were for those pictures?
Yeah, they were.
One of them was painted on there.
Fifth and.
She said she saw a lot more with other
And
locations.
that was just like recently?
This morning
So-
probably.
Yeah, so, what they have, what was the, parade? Last week. Did they have pickup? I don't think they had pickup since that parade, plus they're doing the, Christmas tree lot over there. So there may just be more general trash that's not. Oh, okay, I didn't see that one. I just saw the. Yeah, okay.
Not sure.
Yeah. So she has a,
She said
She
she
has a
doesn't
valid point.
understand that it's Christmas time,
Yeah.
but she said it happens
Yeah.
throughout the year.
So we just need a consensus on that, to
She
let her
just-
send a
She wants
notification.
us to send a notification,
Oh.
or put something in some way of communicating that
hey, the newsletter.
it needs
Yeah,
to.
they got something to write about next month.
The city's doing great, don't be the slum.
It's you guys, with your cred.
She just wants it to be, like, everyone to be aware that they need to follow their contract.
There's a lot of ways to communicate now. Is this something we can just put on the blog
various groups. Let's do that, guys, do that. Right, we're at 8:35, so we will recess for